But in terms of getting the phone, honestly, don't buy the iPhone 14. Don't buy the iPhone 14.
People love iPhone, and it's an important part of our daily lives. We're constantly challenging ourselves to raise the bar, to make it better and even more loved. So let's take a look at the new iPhone.
Wow. Big boy pierced, my pockets is thick, got a big keychain, hang straight from my hip, got a big boy bag, got a big boy drip, make a logo sad, cause a big boy rich. Big boy pierced, my pockets is thick, got a big keychain, hang straight from my hip, got a big boy bag, got a big boy drip, make a logo sad, cause a big boy rich.
As you can see, we're going big with iPhone 14 and even bigger with iPhone 14 Plus.
I think that's enough. So here we see Tim making a lot of claims about how they try to make the new iPhone better than the last iPhone. You see this trend continuing in every keynote every year in the same way. They compare the new iPhone with the previous iPhone, or the new iPhone with an iPhone from 3 years ago. Right in front of me, I have the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 12. And you see these comparisons continue in every product line that they have at Apple. So why do I think you should skip the iPhone 14? Well, there are a number of reasons. And the first being, it looks exactly the same like an iPhone 13. If any one of you watching this can tell me the difference visually between the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 14, except the new range of colors, can you tell me what can you evidently see that is different about the iPhone 14 from the iPhone 13? The cameras are roughly around the same size, maybe slightly, ever so slightly bigger on the iPhone 14s, but it's literally the same thing. In terms of button placement, it's the same thing. Everything is the same in terms of the visual side of things. Now, let's move into the internal side of things. Another thing that I'm not happy about is them repurposing the A15 Bionic chip in a new phone. So take the old internals and put them in an old body that is sold as a new phone. Let's forget that. We know that Apple is notorious for always taking, the same body, the same shell, the same phone, and putting new internals in it and repurposing that body and selling it as a new phone. They've been doing this for a number of years with the SE lineup, from the first generation of the SE, which was basically a glorified iPhone 5S, to the second generation and the third generation of the SE, which is basically a glorified iPhone 8. So they're notorious for doing this, but I think they've pushed it too far. So they've beefed up the A15 Bionic chip so that it can enable these new features. But let's move into a deeper space, right? So the next thing that is supposedly new, well, it is new, but I really don't think it is that big of a deal for the average consumer that you'd spend more money buying the iPhone 14 as opposed to saving that money and buying the iPhone 13, which is initially the same phone. So we're talking about crash detection. So they've installed a couple of gyroscopes here, and it is able to detect whenever you're in an impact. So an impact that is able to produce the amount of force that a typical car crash can, then it will immediately inform emergency services, the police, ambulances, stuff like that, the works. So they've put this in the same body, so it is a new feature, but I honestly still don't think it is worth spending more money and buying this phone over an already cheaper iPhone 13 that is only going to get cheaper with time. The longer the iPhone 14 is on the market, the cheaper the iPhone 13 will be. And let's move on to the next thing: emergency services via satellite. Now, this is a fantastic feature, don't get me wrong. I love it, but I don't think it constitutes paying more for the same phone. It is a hardware improvement once again, but I still don't think it is worth that much, at least to me, as buying the iPhone 14, right? So if we look at this, right? So they made the antennas better. I don't know how. It is basically a very scientific thing. They made the antennas better in such a way that instead of the phone pinging a signal to the nearest tower to you, if you're in a remote area and there simply aren't any towers, we have that a lot here in South Africa. We still struggle with 4G LTE in many areas, especially in the rural areas where most of us go, to visit your family and stuff. So instead of pinging the signal to the nearest tower to you, it basically sends it straight to a communication satellite that is hovering right above us right now. So, which is a great feature, don't get me wrong. I still don't think it is worth you paying a lot more money to buy the iPhone 14 over the iPhone 13. There really isn't a value proposition in all of these features that I've mentioned that can make me say you should buy the iPhone 14. Even action mode. So with the new optical image stabilization feature, which basically gimbalizes your sensor, nobody walks around shooting video like this or taking pictures like this. You try to keep it still as possible unless you are a really avid user of features like that, and you will be pushing your phone to those limits. I still don't recommend getting the iPhone 14. If you are an adventurous person, you go to really rural areas a lot, like remote areas a lot, and you need a feature like that to improve your connectivity, then sure, get the iPhone 14, no doubt. But for the average user that stays in urban areas for most of the time, I really don't think there is a value proposition in spending the extra cash, which is like north of 20k to get the iPhone 14 over a cheap iPhone 13 that is only gonna get cheaper over time. Honestly, my advice is get an iPhone 13. It's still a great phone. It is a year old, but it's better value for your money. Better yet, if you're gonna get the iPhone 14 series, get the Pro models. That's an even better phone. If you do end up getting it, you're better off getting the iPhone 14 Plus because of the battery life and the bigger screen, 6.7 inches, if that matters to you. Other than that, I really honestly think there is no value proposition in spending more money buying it as opposed to just getting an iPhone 13 and saving that money and getting yourself a set of AirPods or an iPad or a MacBook. That's where you see the most value in you spreading your money. But in terms of getting the phone, honestly, don't buy the iPhone 14. Don't buy the iPhone 14. You're better off getting the 13. Trust me. That's been it. See you in another video. Cheers.